President Donald Trump and President Vladimir Putin are scheduled to meet at Joint Base Elmendorf-Richardson in Anchorage, Alaska on August 15. This marks the first U.S.-hosted summit with a Russian president since 2007, and the first Trump-Putin face-to-face since 2019. Why Alaska? Because it's U.S. territory that used to belong to Russia. Talk about symbolism. Trump announced it casually on Truth Social, calling it highly anticipated. Kremlin spokesperson Dmitry Peskov confirmed the agenda includes Ukraine ceasefire, broader economic cooperation, and nuclear arms control. Russia also expects Trump to pressure Western sanctions. It's a high-stakes diplomatic showdown literally at America's edge. North Atlantic Treaty Organization officials are watching closely. If Trump negotiates with Putin directly, it could shift the strategic balance. Some insiders say Trump privately warned that, if Putin doesn't commit to peace, the U.S. might double down on sanctions. Let's rewind a bit. Ukraine's been resisting Putin's invasion for over 2 years now. President Volodymyr Zelensky wasn't invited to this Alaska meeting, and that is stirring controversy. Ukrainian officials say they fear any negotiation without them could legitimize Russian territorial gains. Meanwhile, Trump was reported telling EU leaders this summit is his top priority. He's banking on a miracle. Former Secretary of State Mike Pompeo called it a high-stakes gamble, but one that might open a rare diplomatic window. Putin, for his part, praised Trump in a public statement, calling him sincere and energetic. But Russian analysts estimate Putin wants serious concessions, delayed NATO expansion, recognition of annexed regions, and relief from harsh sanctions. Whether Trump pushes back or meets those demands will shape global responses.
Will Russia face any consequences if Vladimir Putin does not agree to stop the war after your meeting on Friday?
Yes, they will. Yeah.
What will the consequences
there will be
be?
consequences.
Sanctions, tariffs?
There will be, I don't have to say, there will be very severe.
Back home, reactions are swift, even before the handshake happens. In Washington, Senator Lindsey Graham labeled the summit reckless, warning that Trump may grant concessions without securing Ukrainian interests. Democratic lawmakers are also alarmed. Senator Elizabeth Warren called for Ukrainian partners at the table, not sidelines. On the campaign trail, Trump is spin-doctoring. He told rally audiences that he might end the war in as little as 24 hours if Putin wants peace. Critics say it's wishful thinking. Meanwhile, Ukrainian expatriates in New York are planning protests outside the UN this week, waving blue and yellow flags and demanding a seat at the summit. Putin's domestic reaction is more muted. Kremlin state media is framing the meeting as a foreign policy win. Still, analysts warn that if he doesn't get what he wants, it could be spun as a diplomatic failure by the Russian public. We're now 1 day away. What could happen? A potential win might include a temporary ceasefire in Ukraine, leading to humanitarian corridors and prisoner exchanges. There could even be negotiations on arms control or limited economic relief. The risks are just as high. Russia might demand territory concessions, Ukraine may be forced to cede land for a ceasefire, causing major backlash. Trump could make agreements without meaningful enforcement, potentially undermining U.S. credibility. In the long term, this could be the most consequential summit since the Cold War-era meetings of the 20th century. Alternatively, a flop could accelerate NATO defense planning or boost pro-war hardliners in both capitals. Public sentiment in Europe and Asia is watching closely, markets are jittery, energy prices could ramp up, and defense stocks might react sharply if peace isn't secured. The situation is heating up on the global stage as U.S. President Donald Trump turns his attention to India, linking its economic relationship with the United States to the high-stakes ceasefire talks currently underway between himself and Russian President Vladimir Putin. According to reports from Washington this week, the White House has issued a stark warning. If the peace negotiations between the U.S. and Russia collapse, India could face a fresh wave of American tariffs targeting some of its most valuable exports. The statement, which came late Thursday night, has already sent shockwaves through diplomatic and business circles in both countries. The issue at the heart of this warning lies in India's continued purchase of Russian oil, transactions that have surged since the beginning of the Ukraine conflict. While India insists these deals are part of its long-standing energy strategy and not a political maneuver, the U.S. government sees things differently. Senior administration officials claim that by maintaining a strong economic relationship with Moscow, New Delhi is indirectly helping to sustain the Russian war effort, something Washington is determined to choke off. Trump, who has made trade leverage one of his favorite diplomatic tools, has now tied this issue directly to the fate of the ceasefire talks with Putin. Behind closed doors, sources say U.S. trade officials have already drafted potential tariff packages that could hit Indian goods ranging from textiles to pharmaceuticals to information technology services. The proposed measures would be designed not just to hurt exports, but to send a clear political message to New Delhi. The U.S. expects allies to align with its foreign policy priorities, or face economic consequences. For India, which counts the U.S. as one of its largest trading partners, this is not an idle threat. In 2024, trade between the two countries exceeded $190 billion, with Indian exports making up a significant share. A sharp increase in tariffs could disrupt that flow overnight. The timing of Trump's announcement is also deliberate. The ceasefire talks with Russia are entering what insiders describe as a fragile phase. Negotiators have spent weeks hammering out the basic framework for a halt in hostilities, but progress has been slow. Putin, while appearing cordial in public, has made it clear that he expects concessions in exchange for a lasting truce. Trump, never one to shy away from playing hardball, is using every diplomatic and economic pressure point available to him, including the threat of tariffs on third-party countries like India, to push Moscow toward a deal. Reaction in India has been mixed. On Friday morning, Indian Foreign Minister Subrahmanyam Jaishankar held a press briefing in New Delhi, where he stressed that India's foreign policy decisions would be guided by its own national interests, not external pressure. He pointed out that India has long maintained friendly relations with both the US and Russia, and that it is not India's role to mediate disputes between the two powers. However, he also acknowledged the potential economic fallout, noting that Indian industries are carefully watching developments in Washington. Economists warn that if Trump follows through on the tariff threat, the impact could be felt far beyond India's borders. Higher duties on Indian goods would likely drive up prices for U.S. consumers, particularly in sectors like pharmaceuticals, where India is a major supplier of generic medicines. American tech companies that rely on Indian software and IT services could also face higher costs, potentially slowing down innovation and development in key industries. In short, the move could backfire economically, even as it aims to achieve a political goal. For Trump, though, the calculation seems to be less about economics and more about leverage. He has repeatedly used trade policy as a diplomatic weapon, often threatening tariffs to force concessions from other countries. It's a tactic he famously deployed against China during his first term, and now it appears he's applying the same playbook in the context of the Russia-Ukraine crisis. The difference this time is that India, unlike China, is seen as a strategic partner in the US's long-term geopolitical plans, particularly in counterbalancing China's growing influence in Asia. That makes this warning to New Delhi all the more surprising, and potentially risky. The coming days will be crucial. If Trump and Putin manage to secure a ceasefire, the tariff threat against India may quietly fade into the background. But if talks collapse, all signs point to a rapid escalation in U.S. trade actions, with India caught in the crossfire. For now, both American and Indian officials are playing a careful waiting game, each side weighing its options and preparing for the possible fallout. One thing is clear, this isn't just a trade dispute. It's a high-stakes geopolitical maneuver in which India, whether it likes it or not, has become a central player. In Washington, D.C., a story that started as a strange street confrontation has now turned into a full-blown federal case. Over the weekend, a 37-year-old man named Sean Charles Dunn was arrested after he reportedly threw a Subway sandwich at a U.S. Customs and Border Protection agent on 14th Street Northwest, just a few blocks from the White House. The incident took place on Sunday night, but the arrest wasn't announced until Thursday, August 15, after video of the event went viral online. According to witness reports, Dunn approached a small group of agents who were standing near the entrance of a metro station. He began yelling at them and calling them fascists, before suddenly removing a wrapped sandwich from a plastic bag and hurling it toward one of the officers. The sandwich hit the agent in the chest and fell to the sidewalk. At first, some people thought the situation was a prank. But after Dunn continued shouting and refused to leave, the agents called local police, and minutes later he was placed in handcuffs and taken into custody. What makes this story even more surprising is that Sean Dunn wasn't just a passerby. He was an employee of the U.S. Department of Justice, working in the Office of International Affairs. That detail turned what might have been a weird viral video into a serious internal scandal. By Monday morning, the Justice Department had fired him, and on Thursday the U.S. Attorney's Office formally charged him with felony assault on a federal officer, a charge that carries a potential sentence of up to 8 years in prison. Attorney General Pam Bondi released a statement saying the behavior was absolutely unacceptable, calling it evidence of what she described as extremism inside our own government. She added that throwing food at law enforcement officers is not protest, it is violence. Federal prosecutors echoed the same tone, arguing in court filings that even though the object was a sandwich, the intent behind it was aggressive. The internet, on the other hand, reacted very differently. Within hours of the video being shared, it was picked up by TikTok and Twitter, where users posted reaction clips titled "The $5 Footlong Felony" and "Subway vs. Homeland Security." One meme shows the sandwich flying in slow motion with dramatic movie music playing in the background. Another edits the moment into vintage sports commentary, with someone shouting, "He throws," and it's a direct hit. Still, others pointed out that the situation highlights a deeper tension between ordinary citizens and federal law enforcement agencies in the current political climate. One D.C. resident interviewed by a local news station said, "Yes, it's funny, but also kind of a sign of how angry people really are." For now, Dunn remains free on bail and has been ordered to stay away from all federal buildings while the case moves forward. His next court hearing is scheduled for September 4th. Legal analysts say the fact that it happened in a public place, in front of multiple witnesses, makes the prosecution easier, but the unusual nature of the weapon may become part of Dunn's legal defense. Either way, what started as a heated moment with a sandwich has now turned into a federal case that could impact the rest of his life, and turned an ordinary Sunday night in Washington into one of the strangest headlines of the week. A more solemn headline to end on today: Jackie Bezos, the mother of Amazon founder Jeff Bezos, has passed away at the age of 78. According to a family statement, she died on August 14, 2025, at her home in Miami, Florida, after a long battle with Lewy body dementia, a progressive neurological disorder. Jeff Bezos posted a tribute online, calling her the source of my strength and the reason Amazon even exists. Jackie was more than just a parent to the world's richest businessman, she was also a respected philanthropist and co-founder of the Bezos Family Foundation, which supports education programs and youth leadership around the world. Friends describe her as warm, patient, and fiercely supportive, and her foundation has directly impacted thousands of students in the United States, Kenya, and Ecuador. Many people didn't even realize how involved she was behind the scenes in Amazon's early days. She reportedly invested $245,000 of her personal savings to help launch the company back in 1994. The family says she passed away peacefully surrounded by her husband Mike Bezos, her 3 children, and her grandchildren. They've asked the public to donate to education-focused charities instead of sending flowers.